At 3 o'clock Earth time, a priority transmission from the Galactic Coalition shattered the quiet of the State Department war room. The Vornak crisis enters its 14th year. 412 failed treaties. Send your most skilled negotiator immediately.
They want our best diplomat. Our best. After 14 years, as if we have some secret weapon.
Around the table, exhausted State Department officials jump to their feet, arguing over names, credentials, and impossible gaps in protocol.
We don't have a best diplomat anymore. They all quit, or retired, or transferred. Who've we got left? Gunnery Sergeant Ronald, a Marine who once stopped a barracks brawl just by standing in the middle of it. Get me the file on Gunnery Sergeant Ronald. No, don't question it. Just do it.
It was an absurd choice. A warrior with no negotiation training, no treaty knowledge, and no patience for ceremony.
Earth needs a miracle, and right now, he's the closest thing we've got to one.
Within the hour, orders were cut. Gunnery Sergeant Ronald was to depart for the Coalition station at first light.
Diplomatic Corps? They must have run out of actual diplomats.
The orders were absurd. Gunnery Sergeant Ronald, 24 years a Marine, was to mediate a crisis that had broken 412 treaties. He read them twice, then set the datapad aside.
Guess they didn't need a negotiator. They needed someone who'd listen.
The Secretary General demanded Earth's best. I told them that was you.
Ma'am, I am a Marine. I don't negotiate. I stand guard.
Exactly. The Coalition needs someone who can stand in a room full of shouting and not blink. You stopped a barracks riot with a look.
She handed him a thick mission file. He didn't open it.
I'll listen, if that's what's needed.
It's more than that. Try not to start an interstellar incident, Ronald.
By the time he left the briefing, the shuttle schedule was burning a hole in his pocket. Earth's last hope was a Marine who'd never read a treaty in his life. The diplomatic shuttle cut through the stars in silence. Ronald sat alone, his dress uniform untouched, watching the galactic arm stretch past the viewport.
That barracks fight was simpler. 2 gunners with bad blood. I just walked in and stood there until the yelling stopped.
The Coalition station filled the view screen, a vast ring of gilded metal and alien artistry. Docking clamps latched with a shutter that ran through the deck. He stepped off into a corridor that smelled of ozone and wet feathers. Aliens of every shape lined the passage, their whisperings rising like static. A snout-nosed dignitary leaned close, sniffed Ronald's shoulder, and recoiled with a hiss. A reptilian Krellin in elaborate robes pointed at him, green scales glinting, mouth open in disbelief. A Vornak delegate ruffled his blue and gold feathers and squawked something that needed no translation.
Ronald's face stayed neutral. He'd seen worse hazing during boot camp.
At the end of the winding corridor, the council chamber doors loomed, ornate, towering, sealed. The guards gestured him forward. Ronald straightened his collar, took a breath, and pushed the doors open. The great doors swung inward. The circular council chamber fell silent as 100 alien heads turned toward the lone figure in marine blue.
He's their best. That is a soldier, not a diplomat.
Earth sends a primitive to a crisis of galactic magnitude? Unacceptable.
Ambassador Karath, Delegate Vorin, we are here under Coalition law. Earth was asked for its most skilled negotiator.
No ceremonies. I am not here for handshakes or medals. I am here to listen.
He strode past the dumbfounded delegates, pulled out a chair at the central table, and sat. The stone seat scraped loudly in the dead quiet.
He doesn't even introduce himself. He insults this chamber with his silence.
Delegate Ronald. The Vornak crisis has claimed millions. The Coalition requires your voice.
I said I'll listen. You've had 14 years of voices. Maybe you need 1 pair of ears.
The chamber seethed, but no one spoke. For the first time in 14 years, the council had been granted a moment of silence, and it terrified them. The fragile silence snapped. Ambassadors erupted into familiar grievances, mining rights in the Vorta Nebula, ancestral blood debts. They acted as if Ronald didn't exist.
Earth's representative is a mute animal. They have no culture, No negotiation skills, only primitive violence.
I move to censure Earth for mocking this body. A human marine cannot possibly comprehend the nuance of interspecies diplomacy.
Ronald's face was stone. Not a flinch, not a flicker of anger.
Say something human. Defend your worthless species, or slink back to your dirtball.
I am still listening.
The Krellin's claws twitched, Voron's feathers ruffled. The insult had landed nowhere. The chamber fell back into its ritual. Another hour bled into the next. Delegates repeated the same demands, the same refusals.
Same song. Different verse. They don't need a diplomat. They need a referee.
Ronald stayed motionless. To the council, he was an insult. To himself, he was just a pair of ears waiting. Hour 4. Some delegates had stopped pretending. Heads drooped, claws tapped idly on datapads. The Krellin himself had fallen silent, eyes glazed. Ronald glanced at his watch. 6 hours since he'd taken his seat. The chamber clock ticked past late afternoon, local time.
They've been at this for 14 years, and they're still trying to win arguments nobody remembers.
You, human, we have waited out of respect for your pathetic species. Now, speak, or be removed.
Ronald lifted his head slowly, met the reptilian's red eyes with a gaze that had faced down mortars. Then he shook his head.
You refuse to speak. You come across the galaxy to disrespect us with silence. Your world's arrogance has no limit.
He thinks silence is weakness. It's been the only thing holding this room together.
Murmurs rippled. The Secretary General raised a claw for order, but the damage was done. The chamber teetered on the edge of adjournment. Ronald checked his watch again. The second hand swept undisturbed. He had given them 6 hours. They had given him nothing. The council was exhausted. Its patience evaporated. Every ambassador now demanded Ronald's participation, and his silence was becoming a weapon they couldn't disarm.
Does Earth even understand the stakes? Millions dead, star systems burning. And you sit there as if this is a game.
Yup.
The single syllable hung in the recycled air. Every pair of eyes locked onto Ronald's untouched hand on the stone table.
Yup! He makes a mockery of this chamber with a single grunt. This is an outrage.
Explain yourself, human. That cannot be your entire contribution to this negotiation.
They're still waiting for a speech. I gave them the only answer that matters.
The Secretary General raised a claw for silence, but the chamber was already a powder keg. Delegates whispered accusations. All eyes remained on the Marine. The Krellin's scales flushed a deeper green. His claws retracted. For the first time that day, he was silent, and it was not by choice. The clock on the wall ticked past 5 hours, 58 minutes. The air grew heavy. Something was about to break. Ronald's hand remained on the table, steady, deliberate. A silent declaration that he was not done, but neither was the council. The wall chronometer struck 6 hours precisely. With a slow creak of leather, Ronald pushed back his chair and rose to his full height. He stretched his neck, worked the stiffness from his shoulders, and planted both hands flat on the stone. The hush that followed was absolute.
Are y'all done?
Silence. Then, a sound no one expected. Ambassador Karath threw back his head and laughed, a raw, barking laugh that echoed off the banners.
Done, human. We've been done for 13 years.
Other delegates glanced at each other, unsure. The Krellin's outburst had broken the formal cage, and for the first time, Ronald's expression shifted into something almost gentle.
Delegate Ronald, your question, was that a motion to conclude?
Nope. Just a question.
The Krellin's laughter subsided, but the tension had changed. No longer the brittle friction of old grievances. Something else had crept into the room. Possibility. Ronald didn't sit down. He waited. The floor was his now, and every ambassador in that chamber knew it.
Ambassador Karath, what's your daughter's name? I'd like to hear you say it.
My family is not a matter for this council. You have no right to speak her name.
And you, Ambassador Voron, Your daughter's name.
The chamber held its breath. Vorin's feathers flattened against his body, his colorful plumage suddenly dull, his beak clamped shut with a click.
Because they attend the same neutral academy on Belar Prime, and they've been writing letters to each other for over 2 years.
The accusation hung in the air, heavier than any treaty draft. The ambassadors stared at each other as if seeing spies for the first time.
That's not possible. We never made that public.
The Krellin's scales turned a sickly yellow. Vorin's beak snapped open and shut without sound. The silence was absolute.
They didn't ask for proof. They're too scared of what else I might know about their families.
Ronald didn't elaborate. He simply waited, the seed of doubt already spreading through the council like a quiet infection. The Krellin and Vornak ambassadors drew close, their whispers sharp and accusatory. Other delegates looked on, torn between fear and frantic curiosity.
How much else does he know? Our shipping routes, our defensive pacts, this was never part of the brief.
Delegate Ronald, the Coalition demands the source of your intelligence. On what authority do you make this claim?
I am just a pair of ears, remember? I hear things.
Ronald shrugged, a gesture so human, so casual, that it seemed to mock the gravity of the room. He offered nothing more.
I move that we set aside the old text and draft a fresh treaty. A clean start.
The Krellin's voice was unsteady. Across the table, Vorin nodded with frantic, feathered jerks. The other delegates, smelling advantage, fell in line.
They're too scared to call it a 14-year war, and I stopped it with a wild guess.
The motion carried without objection. For the first time in 412 attempts, the chamber was no longer debating war. It was drafting peace. And at the center of it all sat a Marine who had never read a treaty in his life, waiting, like he'd always planned, for them to finally hear themselves. Data pads lit across the chamber. Clawed and feathered hands typed frantically, striking old red lines and replacing them with fresh ones. Half-eaten food containers were pushed aside. The table became a battlefield of concessions, each ambassador racing to appear more reasonable than the last.
We cede the Vorta Nebula. The Krellin may keep the northern corridor if he lowers his tariffs by half.
Ronald gave the faintest dip of his chin. Not a word, barely a motion. But the ambassadors saw it, and their typing speed doubled. Clauses that had stalled for decades vanished in minutes. Ancestral blood debts were commuted to formal apologies. The impossible became mere text.
Keep 'em moving. Don't let anyone stop to think about how they got here.
Within an hour, a draft glowed on the central holo display. No one understood how it had happened so fast, except the man who'd made them believe.
This draft is substantively different. I never thought I'd see my own signature at the bottom of something like this.
But will it hold? Once this room empties and the fear fades?
The Marine didn't answer. He only looked at the clock, which now read 6 hours and 37 minutes. The draft lay on the table, unsigned but alive. The Secretary General rose and spread his claws. Ambassadors, the treaty awaits. A line formed at the head of the table, each delegate clutching a ceremonial stylus.
Before I sign, how did you know about the Academy? The names, the letters, none of that is public.
Does it matter? You want peace, don't you? Your daughter wants peace. So does his. Sign.
The Krellin's claw trembled. Then the stylus touched the parchment, and the draft became law. Vorin signed next, then the others, one after another, their species seals glowing on the document in blood-red light. The chamber erupted. Holographic confetti rained from the vaulted ceiling. Ambassadors who'd sworn blood oaths now embraced like old friends.
It's over. Actually, over. 14 years, and a human Marine ended it.
Don't let him see you sweat. Just nod and get out.
We should hold a ceremony. Invite your people. Celebrate the peace. You've done the impossible. Delegate Ronald.
Ronald didn't answer. He simply stood, pushed back his chair, and walked toward the side door, leaving the celebration behind. The treaty was signed. He was done. The side door sealed behind him. Ronald walked alone through the gleaming corridor, the distant sounds of celebration already fading.
Delegate Ronald, the Secretary General, demands your presence. Return to the chamber immediately.
Demands. That word never worked on me.
He didn't slow. The docking ring yawned ahead, his Earth shuttle humming on standby. A coalition attendant stepped forward, protocol tablet in hand, but Ronald's glare froze him in place.
I am not here for parades. That shuttle leaves in 3 minutes. Step aside.
The attendant retreated, his mandibles clicking in distress. Ronald boarded without a backward glance. Through the shuttle's viewport, he saw a half-dozen ambassadors scurry onto the platform, waving frantically. Too late.
Let him wave. I am going home.
The docking clamps released with a shudder. The shuttle pulled away, and the Coalition station shrank to a star speck. Earth's sun rose over the shuttle port. Ronald descended the ramp into a humid morning and a wall of official silence. No press, no fanfare, just a staff car waiting.
Gunnery Sergeant Ronald. Your report says the treaty was signed in 38 minutes. My analysts are calling it impossible.
Ma'am, I just listened. The rest took care of itself.
The Coalition is drafting proposals to induct you into their diplomatic corps. There's talk of a formal ambassadorship. This is unprecedented.
No, ma'am. I am not a diplomat. I am a Marine.
Ronald, this is a direct path to a full colonel's position. You'd have a staff, a pension, a legacy.
You sent me because there was no one else. I did my job. Now, let me go back to doing my job.
You are refusing a once-in-a-lifetime promotion over what principle?
Principle is all I've got, ma'am. Send me back to my unit. That's the only reward I want.
Park stared at the closed door long after Ronald left. On her desk, the diplomatic corps offer glowed, unsigned and gathering digital dust. 3 days later, a hangar on base was converted into an awards hall. The Marine Corps promoted Ronald, despite his clear refusal. The citation rang out. For exceptional diplomatic service, Gunnery Sergeant Ronald is hereby promoted to Master Gunnery Sergeant and awarded the Galactic Peace Medal.
They just don't listen. I said no ceremonies.
Ronald stood at attention, his jaw like granite, as a general pinned the heavy medal onto his chest. The medal gleamed under the hangar lights. Ronald's gaze did not.
One more piece of metal. I'll have to pretend it doesn't exist.
Cameras flashed. Officials applauded. Ronald's face betrayed nothing.
A reporter shouted, "How does it feel to be a hero?" Ronald stared through him. If they knew how I did it, this whole room would turn hostile.
The ceremony ended. Ronald walked off, the medal already burning a hole in his uniform. The drive to his small house on the edge of base took 35 minutes. He didn't turn on the radio. Inside, he walked straight to the bedroom, yanked open a drawer already overflowing with old gear, and dropped the medal into the clutter. The Galactic Peace Medal clinked against a heavy wrench and a set of worn dog tags from his first deployment.
That's where you belong. Next to the stuff I actually use.
Then he sat at his desk, found a pen and a sheet of plain paper, and pressed the nib to the page. He addressed it to the Coalition Secretariat. No greeting. The message was a single line straight to the point. "Please stop." Underneath, he signed, Gunnery Sergeant Ronald. Then he folded the paper and sealed the envelope with Marine Corps precision.
Let 'em chew on that. Maybe now they'll get the message.
He dropped the envelope in the outgoing mail slot by the door. Outside the window, the lawn already needed mowing. The truth was simpler than anyone imagined. Ronald had never researched a single ambassador. He hadn't opened the mission file once.
I had no clue if they even had daughters. I just figured they're tired. They're old enough. Everyone's got kids.
The shared academy, the letters, none of it existed. He'd pulled the entire story out of thin air, betting on fear and exhaustion. The bluff held because no one dared call it. And the Coalition, still in awe, officially renamed the Vornak peace the Gunny Accord.
Gunny Accord. They just won't let it go. At least the shooting stopped. 14 years of war. And all they needed was a guy too stubborn to be scared of them.
The letter arrived at the Coalition chamber. "Please stop," became a legend among the ambassadors, a final, baffling message from the human who'd humbled them all. In a twist no one predicted, the lie became self-fulfilling. Years later, the Krellin and Vornak daughters would indeed meet at that academy, because now there was peace.
I am not a diplomat. I am a Marine. And Marines don't negotiate. They just remind people what's important.
And with that, Master Gunnery Sergeant Ronald turned off the news and reached for his lawnmower. The galaxy had its peace. He had his grass. Ronald returned to the training fields as if the last week had never happened. The recruits were already forming up, their chatter dying at his approach. A young private jogged beside him. "Sir, is it true you settled a 14-year war by telling them to knock it off?"
Something like that.
The private gawked. Behind him, a couple of seasoned Marines exchanged grins.
They think I've got some secret. The secret is they were too tired to keep fighting.
That week, 3 more delegations from the Coalition requested him by name. Each request was forwarded to his desk. Each one ended up in the shredder.
Tell them I am busy. Training recruits.
A clerk offered to frame the Galactic Peace Medal for his office. Ronald told him to frame a map of the firing range instead. By Friday, the recruits no longer stared, they just worked harder. Ronald's legend had become a quiet pressure on the squad, and in the evenings he went home, mowed his lawn, and read his mail without opening any of it. 10 years later, a Saturday sun found Ronald pushing his mower over the same lawn. The clippings flew, the engine hummed, nothing had changed. He paused, wiped his forehead, and looked at the sky. A news chime sounded from inside the house. He stepped inside. The holographic screen glowed with a Coalition broadcast. Gunnery Accord Anniversary, a Krellin announcer called it the miracle of the century, praising the human who'd solved the unsolvable.
They still don't know it was a bluff. Maybe they never will.
Ronald reached out and pressed the power stud. The screen went dark. The silence returned, broken only by the distant hum of the idling mower outside.
Peace is better than truth. That's enough.
He walked back into the sunlight, restarted the engine, and finished the lawn. The grass didn't care about galactic peace. A young Marine, fresh from boot camp, spotted Ronald crossing the parade grounds and jogged over, eyes wide. "Sir, the Gunny Accord, how did you do it? Everyone says it was a miracle."
It was nothing. I just listened.
The private stared, waiting for more. Ronald's expression gave nothing away.
They always want a secret. The secret was they were too tired to keep fighting.
He started walking again. The young Marine remained rooted, trying to process the most important man on base telling him it was nothing. But the private saw something else in that shrug, a man who had held the weight of a galaxy and set it down.
Don't need legends. Just need Marines.
The private never asked again, but he told his squad what he'd seen. The story only grew as stories do. Ronald walked home, the medal still in its drawer, the galaxy still at peace, and nothing more to prove. On Bellar Prime, the Neutral Academy held its graduation under a gold-smeared sky. A young Krellin female with scales the color of moss walked to the center of the stage. Beside her, a Vornek with midnight feathers bowed her head. They shook hands, firm, real. The Academy seal gleamed on their diplomas. In the audience, the Krellin and Vornak ambassadors sat 3 rows apart. Neither smiled, neither spoke. The lie Ronald told in that council chamber had no weight at all, until it did. The daughters had never exchanged a single letter before that day. But now, because of peace, they could. They laughed on the podium, sharing a joke no one else understood. 2 friends who should not have met. The galaxy never got the intelligence report it demanded. The bluff was buried under 10 years of quiet. The ambassadors never spoke of it. The secret sat between them like a silent peace treaty, and on a small blue planet, a retired Marine pushed his mower and never read the graduation announcement. Years had passed since the Gunny Accord, but Ronald's lawns still needed mowing. His hair had grayed, his shoulders bent, but the rhythm of the mower never changed. The Galactic Peace Medal remained in the bedroom drawer. Buried deeper under old manuals and spare parts, Ronald never looked at it, never needed to.
Peace was never about medals. It was about Saturday afternoons.
He finished the front yard, pushed the mower back to the shed, and wiped the sweat from his forehead. The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of gold and blue.
They got their miracle. I got my lawn.
A small smile crossed his face, the smile of a man who'd solved the unsolvable and asked for nothing in return. Inside the house, the metal gathered dust. Outside, the galaxy was at peace, and Ronald's grass was green.